So I have some pet dogs, and here they are. One thing they love is when they get fed. She missed. They love being fed. Whenever I give them food, they get excited. It's pretty cute. I wish I could get this excited about food. Maybe I wouldn't be so small. I found a baby. The excitement that the dogs get from the food is natural. I never had to train them to enjoy it. When they first came to my house, I'd get home and surprise them with a bag of food. The thing about the dog food is it makes a loud rustling whenever I open it. After a couple of days, I discovered that I could no longer surprise them with the food because of the rustling of the bag. They would hear the rustling and get excited, even before I gave them the food. Now also, whenever I went to get a bag of chips, they would hear the rustling and get excited. This learned response my dog figured out is referred to as classical conditioning. Now I'm going to write an S for stimulus. It's anything that stimulates your senses. It's anything you can see, taste, hear, or touch. Stimulus produces a response, which will be shown as R. Here's my little R. My dogs didn't have to learn to be excited about the food. It's their normal response. Since they weren't taught to be excited about the food, we can refer to the food as an unconditioned stimulus. An unconditioned stimulus stimulates some sort of response. In this case, the food triggers excitement. The excitement is the unconditioned response. It occurs naturally as it wasn't learned. Unconditioned is something that occurs naturally. Conditioned is something that is learned. Back to my dogs though. Right before they get the food, the bag would rustle. The sound of the rustling is the neutral stimulus. Right. NS. It's something that can be sensed by seeing, tasting, or hearing. It doesn't produce the reflex being tested on its own. In this case, the bag can be heard, but the sound of the bag didn't naturally cause excitement. They had to learn it, which is why they didn't respond the first few times. Since the rustling bag didn't produce excitement on its own, it's a neutral stimulus. Now, when the neutral stimulus is followed a short time later by the unconditioned stimulus, it causes the unconditioned response of excitement, a happy dog. Classical conditioning itself occurs when the neutral stimulus, the sound of the bag, is presented followed immediately by the unconditioned stimulus, which is the food. Pairing these together is how we establish classical conditioning. I was presenting the sound of the bag with the presentation of the food. Classical conditioning actually happens when the neutral stimulus, in our case the rustling of the bag, is able to create the same response of excitement as the unconditioned stimulus, which was our food. So, in our example, we can say that classical conditioning took place when the sound of the bag was enough on its own to create excitement. When this has happened, we say the neutral stimulus is no longer neutral, but it's the conditioned stimulus, as it has now been learned. It's acquired the ability to recreate a response that the food once did. My dogs were conditioned to respond to the sound of the bag by acting excited. An excited response that they have now grouped with the sound of the bag instead of that food itself. This response is no longer unconditioned because they had to learn to respond with excitement to the sound of the bag. The term for this is called the conditioned response because it was learned. This is classical conditioning and why I have to feel guilty every time I bring a McDonald's bag into my house.